Hello everyone, and I finally am back with reviewing your Fall Guys creative maps after quite a long hiatus. So I do want to explain why the hiatus happened was that nearer towards the release date of the last episode, which is episode 2, and now I really didn't have much of a motivation to really keep pumping out the episodes as fast as I wanted to, and now that as I've really finished up with whatever I have, any real life commitments, I have started to gain some of this motivation back in order to create content for all of you and to let y'all understand how a creative map should really be, and in order for players to really enjoy them as much as possible. So now then, here we are with the third episode of such a concept that after I have really revamped it and everything else. And for those who are relatively new to what I've been doing for this is basically a concept where I take creative maps that are released through different periods of time, because as we all know, creative maps can be updated at any time, and throughout the different updates that Fall Guys have gone through, the budget that they may have will impact the aesthetics that can be displayed on such a map, which is one of the main reasons why I will be including budget from this episode onwards. But before we do get into the maps for this particular episode, I do have to show y'all what were my real final thoughts in case that y'all have not kept up for the maps in episode 2. Just do keep in mind that for episode 2, there will not be any segment where I mention about the budget, because this was rather a relatively new feature that I realized that could be searched up through a particular website. So let's get right into it, as I will see y'all in the summary area. Alright, so for the first map that we had done in episode 1, it was called Rainbow Rapids. So just as a quick summary itself, the points on the right is what I've come up with after playing through the map itself, and as you would see on the bottom left, there is a final rating. I will give about 10 to 20 seconds for each map so that all of y'all can actually have enough time to read through all my thoughts before moving on to the next map. And the second map that I've done in episode 2, Cosmic Pipes. The third map that was mentioned in episode 2, Pleasure Place. The fourth map, Mad Lab. And the last map, Rock, Flag, and Eagle. Alright then, now that all 5 maps have been gone through, I will quickly see all of y'all in the first map of episode 3, where before I even start to do so, I will explain to perhaps some of the newer viewers of this concept what I am looking for at each stage and point. Alright, so for those of you who are relatively new to this concept, as I mentioned that I will quickly be going through this concept on what I look through, as well as how I do review maps and everything else. So the first part that I am looking towards is how the gameplay flows for the map that is currently being reviewed. If it's too difficult for perhaps the newer players, there might be some issues with how I think of the map, because at the end of the day, maps are meant to be enjoyed, not to let players just constantly stress out over them. That is what I strongly believe in. The second part that I look for, although not as much nowadays, is the amount of aesthetics that are present in the map. Because once again, when we talk about maps itself, the aesthetics really boosts the momentum and the feelings, not so much feelings to say, but really how players feel that they can really enjoy through some of these maps. Then, of course, for one very important fact detail that I do look through is when this particular map was last updated. As most of y'all would be aware, is that when Fall Guys releases an update, whether most usually through the expiration of the Flame Pass nowadays, they will implement newer things in creative, and even when they first released creative for some history lessons right here, they actually have the budget set at 1000 budget before being upgraded to 2000 in the tool up update. Then much more recently have they chosen to increase that value to 2500. All these smaller details that they do will help to prevent players from getting too frustrated, because for one thing, budgets limit creativity. That is something that I am fully aware of. And at the same time, due to me now covering budget as a factor, even though budget will not play a harsh factor as to how I really review the maps, even though there is just a very small percentage of it, there are a couple of times where I chosen a normal creative map. Let's say the budget back of this particular map is only at 2000 when it was created. However, as time goes by, and if the budget has actually exceeded what the maximum is allowed, there can be two reasons for such a map exceeding the budget. The first being that the budget cost has changed over the updates, and that is something that the creator will have zero say over it, because over time things change. Adaptability is very important, as I feel. And the second is that there are some other things that can be done for such maps where you can exceed the amount of maximum budget and have different things as to what normal players can access. And I don't want to really ruin the eventual life of creative, so this is why I will not mention what possible external tools that there might exist and everything else. So with that, let us actually start with the first map for today, as you have been seeing for perhaps the last 3 minutes. it would be Tokyo Tower. So with that, let us begin and we shall look through the map. So first part here, towards the major slide, I think there is not much of anything players can argue with. It's just a massive simple slide to work around. Then this is when we really access the tower itself. And for those of you who actually have seen the thumbnail and everything, this is really just talking about Tokyo Tower, and I just noticed this little figure down at the bottom of the slide. But regardless, let us begin the ascent of the tower. So, as some of you will have noticed, the arrows at the bottom right over here, they are basically just guiding you as to where you're supposed to start your ascent of the tower. And this map itself is rather relatively a longer sized map, but I think there is much more of a linear path of movement and everything else, and it is not to say that now with the improved jump physics and everything else, some parts of the tower can be skipped through for a little bit quicker navigation. So, as you guys will have noticed, is that there are quite a large number of checkpoints to help players, because falling all the way down to the bottom of the tower where some respawn slime awaits will be very disastrous if you made it all the way to the top. Now that much being said, it is not just a simple run up and down type of map, otherwise I wouldn't really have classified this map to be reviewed. Now reaching this point, this is where you face your first massive loophole, or not loophole, but major obstacle in the path that says you cannot go this way. So what you're supposed to do at this point is climb up the side of the tower where you notice a helpful hanging sign over here. You're supposed to just walk around, and then you can continue on your ascent. As if you manage to see right above me, you will be having some hex tiles waiting as a next set of obstacles. Now that much being said, here are the hex tiles that will actually respawn. So even if this map is much more of a larger one, I mean a larger player size, there will not be too much of an issue, as at least hex tiles respawn for each individual player to be able to pass through. All you just need is just some patience, and you'll be able to do this map justice. Now, here is a Blizzard fan where all it does for you is to boost your momentum. Now, moving upwards, we have another part. And here is a Boom Blaster. That is not how I should be using a Boom Blaster, but here we go. We are now made it to the second half of the map, as I will call it, as I struggle to find my way around. This is perhaps where the tower ascent gets to be a little bit more complicated, as there are much more obstacles that impede your way to progression. So now once again, instead of having a full tower path, you have to hop over onto the outside and go accordingly. So as you notice, there is actually directly slime above me, and if you decide to jump during this area, you would have respawned. And make sure not to ask me why you respawned in the comments if you didn't realize that there was slime above you. Then next up, you have some platforming based sections. Also, now that we are actually in here, I do want to test something out. Oh, this area is definitely not accessible, so that was just a fun little test for me. Uh-oh. That's not right. But this is where the safety of the checkpoint comes in place. And now you have some bullets standing in your way. You have to shimmer left and right to walk through the map itself. Similarly for this part of the tower. Then now you have a conveyor belt. So really at the end goal is that this tower is just a long tower to conquer. That's not what I want to do. Oh, there we go. Checkpoint has been reached, and we proceed to another area with more hexagon tiles. Now with more precise jumps being required. Now, bar platforms, as I just incredibly messed that up. Dual bars. Now pendulums will now obstruct our path. And now a speed arch to cover our way ascent to the very top. And I'm pretty sure that is for the last section of the area, as you can actually see that we are at the top of the tower. Just some little explanation that I have in mind, as you actually would have seen the finish line. But before I do finish off the map, I'm gonna jump right off, and you can actually see the entire tower in its entirety. But of course I am not doing this entire tower again, so I'm gonna walk over to the respawn area and get myself respawned to be at the top of the tower and finish off the map. Now I will quickly show you the budget for this map. Alright, so this is basically Tokyo Tower. As you guys may have seen that in the list of the budget here, I did actually search it up, and the budget for this map is slightly over budget, with where the maximum amount of budget allowed was 2000 and this map has hit 2010. Now, what has exactly happened that caused the map to be over budget, I am not too aware of this. However, the map itself is much more of a monotone map to speak of. However, there are just some elements of obstacle that poses some difficulty, but not too steep of a difficulty. But now, here is what I have to really say about this else. Tower climb, monotonous. Obstacle-wise, very limited. And lastly itself, there is more than enough checkpoints for error prevention, as I would personally call it as. But as for my final rating, because of how much more of a monotone size scale map that this map really is, the maximum I can only give is an A rating. So that will be all for this first map. I know as of this point in time already, you guys will probably be in about 20 minutes in for just the first map alone, but there are, just for you to know, is that there will be some maps that are longer and some maps that are relatively short. So each episode will vary according to the maps that I have. So just be on the lookout for such small little attention to detail. Now then, on to the second map that we will be having, which will be... Right, the second map that we have for today is titled as Galaxia. So, I think most of y'all would have recognized the creator of this map, should y'all have at least played more than enough maps from the older Knockout days, as well as some elements of Creator Spotlight. So directly from the very beginning, you have noticed that there are multiple paths. There are even some shortcuts that players can use. Some clear navigation signs, and actually, this is something I didn't notice initially, but this fan symbol is actually activated by a trigger zone. Then now some speed arches for some elements of difficulty spike, as I would say. And even some boom blasters that threaten players' progress. Then once again, a trigger zone with a fan to carry us up on top to the next area. And some quick progression as well. And we even have respawn zones. Okay. So I guess this pressure plate is mainly for much more fun aesthetic purposes. Bye, have a great night to the little ball over there. But that all said, it's time to qualify and we will look through the rating for this map. Alright, so for this map itself, the first thing I do want to point out is that the budget is perfectly fitting of a 2000 out of 2000 budget, meaning all the budget itself mainly used to their maximum potential. Now, some quick thoughts of this map. Quick, linear, and error prevention. These three factors, I think, would shoot up the map to quite a much more of a higher rating as compared to other segments that I usually look for in maps. So if I'm not mistaken from the name of the map itself, because as far as I'm aware, sometimes map names in certain languages will mean a certain word, and my best bet is that this is trying to refer to galaxy overall, and I think this overall aesthetics map can actually bring some elements to it. So that much being said, I think this map alone can deserve a S rank to a map. There might be some parts where I will look through again and it might be an S plus, which is why I do usually have a final rating attached to each map. But for now, my thought process for this map is that it deserves a minimum of an S rank, apologies for some grammar issues. But we will quickly move on to the third map for today, and it will be shown in just a short moment. So the third map for today, we actually have Diamond and Black Run. I think not much to be said about this map other than the fact that we basically spawn in the ground. So all these are little drums. Some settings. Are these actually conveyor belts or spinning platforms? Doesn't look like to be the case. However, I am starting to see some sticker layering issues, which is why we actually have such a sticker display. Minor aesthetic inconveniences. However, we do have some kind of platforming involved. That is not gonna be fun as I keep sliding off the map. Now we get to our first checkpoint area, and we have gone the wrong way, as you would see that the arrows are already guiding me on where to go, but I just chose to go the wrong way. And I wonder why is that area actually barricaded off. That is totally not right, to be honest. I suppose we are supposed to carry the block over. Now we have safe passage back. And I think that is not the way to go. Hmm. Let's see here. Now, this is where maps can get complicated. But based on the arrow directions, it seems that we are walking towards the right way. So now, here comes the real question as to why such a issue is happening. Now then, based on my map analysis already, I think I did already figure out what we are supposed to do with this block. So of course we need to put the block down here for it to activate the pressure plate. Then moving back down, I think we do need to squeeze through the hole, although it seems a little much more complicated. I just fell off, and now we need to restart this section. So we do actually see the finish line right over there. Unfortunately, that is not exactly the way to do it. No! So there's either two things of this map. One of which is that the updates that has been recently released ended up breaking the size of respawn zones, which is causing this particular issue where I cannot seem to progress on the map. Or second, I am totally missing one single element that is present on the map. which is resulting in me not moving on for the next section. So this seems to be a classic case of update destruction. So this is definitely not the fault with the creator, although the mm, let's try to work out something else, even though the block was originally meant to be in this area. That's not right. I just lost the block. Alright, creative genius at its finest. We are actually finding another way to clear this map. Oh, that's not right. And that isn't it either, as we failed to clear the map. But as I've said, this is a issue where the updates broke the map. Alright, so the main thing I do want to point out about this map is that it only has a budget of 1,149 out of a possible 2,000 budget. And let's not obviously talk about the fact that the game update broke the map. That is not a problem with the creator itself, more of the game's fault. But as you see, within the last minute, I decided to opt and try for another approach where I use the block as a standing platform to help myself progress with the map. So that much being said, I think if you were to really include these type of pipes as a means of progression to another part of the map itself, do make sure that your scaling is entirely accurate, because obviously we won't know when updates would actually break a map and everything else. But with such a short map in mind, and I believe when this map was first created, there wasn't really a case where you could make use of the, what was it called, the color wheel, or is it color palette? I don't remember. Yes, as I've just now and double confirmed, the color palette had not existed from when this map was created, so I cannot fault it for not having the best representation of the diamond color aspect, but obviously the shade of blue that was then available already hoped to prove such a detail existed. So my final rating for this map, due to the fault with the game itself, I would actually have to give this map a highest of a B, but really again the mistake of the game does make me hope to push it to a B plus, even though that's not of a usual rating that I give. So we shall quickly move on to the fourth and fifth map combined together. So I will be looking through both maps first before I opt to review those two maps individually. So catch you for the fourth map in a very short moment. So now here is the fourth map we have for today, Sunken Bridge. I think there isn't much to say about the fact that for this map, other than the fact that obviously you see that we are basically in the middle of a bridge. So some standard obstacles like punching gloves, some platformings, conveyor belts with swing axes, all in our way. Also, these are automated and these are not like the turnstiles that you usually see in Whirligig, where we have to be cautious about such details. And I would say the speed is rather slow, so there shouldn't be too much of an issue for any players clearing them. And up until this final part, I think is where the biggest difficulty will come, as all but 4 different platforms would actually be sunken under the slime. So that much being said, this map is short and sweet, but we shall look out for the 5th map before we head back into the slideshow presentation, where that's where I do most of my thought process analysis in order to look for the map itself. So the final map we have for today is Block Off. So in this map itself, it's mainly white and black color themed, as you basically see quite a number of varying obstacles that poses little threat, I would say. There's numerous paths, some of which is catered for players who are not that accurate with their movements and everything else. And this is the main section that would perhaps cause most issues, where the rotation controllers with the different head blocks will cause some issues. And again, now reaching the final area where we will see some inclined obstacles per se. Again, there are numerous paths to reach this final area, so I'll just run up and down the course a little just for you to see through what the course can look like, and I just massively failed that area. But the left and right path is exactly the same. It's only in the middle area where it's a different type of obstacle route. Now then, let me get back to the old area before making it to Qual, as I definitely have some issue doing. And there we go. So that is the different routes that you can actually take. I'll jump off in order to quickly respawn and qualify for this map. Now, that all said and done, we will look into these two maps. Alright, so for this fourth map, Sunken Bridge, as for those of you who might have already seen it, it was really a point where I just look through the map and say that this map is just not so much to a full complete linear map where it's just one straight line. There are some curves, some bends, but overall the difficulty for players to adapt, I think it's more than simple enough. With such a short duration of gameplay for the map itself, and how error tolerant it is until much more of the very final area, it's definitely getting along a grade of an A. There are at least some mixture of obstacles, and even the slime at the very bottom, even though most of you would not be able to figure it out as slime, is made based on water, which obviously fits the theme of a sunken bridge. Of course, why is there slime at the very ending which is pink? Now, that is a question that I will not be able to answer for you. Now, the last map, Block Off. So, to me personally, Block Off is more like a game show type-ish map, where things has to be done in a specific different angle, where you need to navigate skillfully through the platform in order to reach the Game Master at the very ending. However, that much being said, there are different paths, different increments for different players to play through. And I think that is all I have to really say about for this 5 maps reviewed today. And hopefully I do see you all for the last and final, not last and final map, for the next episode. Apologies, as I will post out my thoughts for this the maps of this episode, and you guys really see it more in clever detail, how I phrase the words and how I am absolutely terrible at phrasing out my opinions out in my head and then just reading them off the brain, essentially. But that is all for today.